Hello, everyone. I'm Jonathan Crow, Director of Community at Ninja One, and I have with me Paul Evans, our product manager in charge of Apple MDM. Paul, happy Friday.
Yeah, happy Friday. Best day of the week.
Best day of the week. Not only because it's the end of the week, but because we get to talk about all the new things that you've been working on that are now included in 10.0.
Mhm.
Thank you, everyone, for joining. Robert, as always. Robert, with a question right out of the gate. Is Paul my new favorite PM? Right now, he is. He
No pressure.
absolutely is. Um, Thank you, everybody, for joining us throughout 10.0 week. As we've been talking about, 10.0 has rolled out with a ton of new features and capabilities, and we have been taking deeper dives into those each day this week, from patching to the updates to IT asset management and the PSA, SSO updates, loads of things. And now we're going to zero in on MDM. And as Ninja has grown with these new products, backup, remote access, MDM, there's just so much involved with everything. And Mac is kind of its own world in a lot of ways, right, Paul?
Oh
So,
yeah.
yeah, let's talk about some of the things that you're going to be sharing today.
All right, yeah. So like Jonathan was saying, in 10.0, we have one major new feature for macOS, which is around FileVault encryption management. And I'll be walking through that shortly. And then we have, I think, one other smaller feature that will affect all MDM platforms that I'll highlight at the end as well.
Awesome. Okay, cool. Well, then let's get to it.
All right, so here I have you in my nice QA environment because this demo is going to work perfectly live. Fingers crossed. But yeah, when it comes to managing encryption in Mac, if it's not something you're doing today, you'll be heartened or disheartened to know that while it doesn't fully require MDM, doing it effectively really does require MDM. So if it's something you're getting into or you're not familiar with yet, just kind of be aware. If adopting and managing Macs becomes in your purview, you'll be looking into some sort of MDM management in some way or another. But when it comes to encryption, we have this payload right within the policy under the MDM section. And really all it is a handful of checkboxes and I guess one numerical configuration you can specify. But the top two checkboxes are kind of the most important to remember. The first one is pretty straightforward. When a device is enrolled in Ninja One MDM and applied to this policy, do you want it to be encrypted or not? Yes or no? Not every company, not every business, not every use case will require encryption, but it's common enough that you'll want to be familiar with it. And then the second one, do you want to escrow the recovery key? Uh, if you're familiar with how encryption works on Windows, this will not be a foreign concept to you. But when a device is encrypted, there is a recovery key generated automatically by the device. And optionally, you can choose if you want this key to be visible to the user or not. But regardless of what you select there, you can determine, do you want that key to be visible to Ninja One or not? Unless there are very serious concerns about user privacy, I would generally expect most technicians would want Ninja One to have access to that recovery key. And so by default, this is enabled. And I'll show you how that works momentarily. And then the other checkbox that's interesting is force enable and setup assistant. This is going to be applicable when brand new device enrollments are in play, particularly if you're using automated device enrollment, where you can take a brand new device or a device that's just been wiped and enroll it directly into MDM automatically. By having this box checked, it will ensure that encryption gets enabled right during that initial device setup. Otherwise, if the device is already set up or if you don't have that checkbox enabled, FileVault gets enabled after the next user logout. So something to keep in mind if you do have active devices that you apply this policy to, the device won't encrypt until the user next logs out. And you can configure a number of deferrals with these last two options where the user can say no, not now, not now, a couple times, or whenever they next log out, you'll just force the encryption. But anyway, the setup pretty straightforward right in the policy. So let's look at how it looks on the actual device. So if I go to my Mac that's enrolled in Ninja One, and I go to the MDM details, under the security section here, we'll be able to see, is this device encrypted? If a recovery key has been escrowed, we'll be able to view it here, and you'll be able to see when that key was last updated. So of course, the very first time that device reports, you'll be able to see it here. But if that key ever changes, which I'll get to in a second, you'll see when that was updated as well. Just so you can kind of keep tabs and make sure that it makes sense to what you would expect. When you click into the recovery key, this access is actually audited. So anytime a technician clicks into it, you'll be able to see an activity generated that the technician has viewed it. And that's just a way to audit who has actually accessed these keys, just as an additional security measure. If the key has been rotated before, you'll see any previous, or you'll see the previous key, just in case there's some sort of mix up about which key to use or which key was last accessed. And then of course, you'll see the current key. So how this comes into play is if you have an end user that for whatever reason is completely logged out of their device, there's a special process to boot that device into recovery mode. And when they're in recovery mode, they can access, or they can enter this key to get back into their device. So it's just an extra fail safe that you can use if a user gets logged out and your device is encrypted. Typically, I would recommend if you ever have to use this key for any reason, once you're done with it, you want to change it up just to make sure the user didn't write it on a post-it note somewhere and send it out. You can just rotate it, click request rotation here. Let me go and unlock my device so you'll see that go through. And then we can look at the device activities. And so you'll be able to see some of the ones I was talking about. Paul Evans has viewed the FileVault recovery key. I viewed it again. I requested to make the change. And then up here, the device has confirmed that the key has been updated. So if I go back and look at this, I'm not sure if anybody will be able to remember, but hopefully you can see that the key that used to say current recovery key now is down at previous recovery key, and we have a new recovery key here. Once this video is uploaded and recorded, we can go double check and make sure that that's actually the case. But that's kind of it. So with macOS, you can now manage encryption. Setup is just in the policy. It'll get automatically enabled for new enrollments in the setup assistant, or for existing devices that are already set up, it gets enabled the next time the user logs out. You can view and manage the recovery key right in the Ninja One dashboard. And finally, we will audit any request to view or change that recovery key. So you'll always have that paper trail if anything ever comes up. So yeah, so then let me point out the one other feature I mentioned before. This is a little smaller in scope and is more of a nice to have, but any device with cell service, which will primarily be your mobile devices, if we can collect the carrier and cellular information via MDM, we'll have that in this dashboard here. And you'll also be able to filter by it. So if I search for phone, you have phone carrier, EID, IMEI, and phone number. One of the most common requests we got kind of in the initial deployments of MDM was, okay, I have a bunch of devices in there, but I usually keep track of them by phone number or carrier information or something like that. And it was pretty tricky to be able to look those up in Ninja One. But as of 10.0, we'll have we've already collected that information previously, but we have it all serviced and we have it available to search and filter as you need to help find the devices you're looking for.
Awesome. So, Paul, we did get a question from Striker. Hey, Striker.
Yep.
And this is regards to, so FileVault is basically the Mac equivalent to BitLocker, right?
Yep.
Fair to say. And so he's just pointing out, this seems a lot like BitLocker, but the UI design was completely rebuilt. Any reason that design was so different? And so I guess that's my question is, I know that we are able to, help with recovering BitLocker keys and everything, but is there a native component to that we have, or is it really through PowerShell? I guess my question is more
Mhm,
like if the UI is if this was a decision on our part, or if this is really just pointing
mhm.
out the differences between Mac and what Microsoft has decided.
It's a little of A and a little of B. So there's definitely some aspects, particularly of the setup, that Apple defines kind of which APIs are available, and we implement those APIs the way that make the most sense. So that aspect of it, there definitely are some differences between Mac and Windows. Uh, Conceptually, though, you're right. The features are very similar. The concept of collecting a recovery key and viewing it. So one of the areas that is different in the UX fairly significantly is viewing the recovery key here, as well as some of the auditing capabilities. Uh, Part of that is done because we have to support uh, MDM only devices in addition to agent only devices. And on Windows, that's not really much of a distinction, but it is a distinction on the Mac side. So since we're collecting this information through the MDM protocol, we're currently displaying it in kind of the MDM area of that device details. And there are some scenarios where there may be no agent involved, or it may be something elsewise. And we wanted to make sure this was accessible in those scenarios as well. Whereas on the Windows side, it's all be collecting through the agent, so it's being displayed right with the agent as well. So long term, we do plan to kind of eliminate on the Mac side the sort of separation between agent information and MDM information and get everything a little bit more streamlined. But in the meantime, we do just have those separated out. So we can support all of the different use cases we want to support, and keeping everything where people would expect. So there definitely are some changing design standards, and you might see things move around a little bit in the future. But I think it ultimately comes down to partially platform differences and partially just some design changes over time as well.
Awesome, great, thanks for that,
Mhm,
Paul and Striker. Good question. Um, so just to back up a little bit too, the for folks who I'm assuming a lot of you who are watching, you are actively managing Macs and you have looked into the Ninja One's MDM uh, functions. If you're not actively using them, you're at least trying them out. But if that's not the case, I mean, Paul, do you want to give a little bit of clarification? Basically, with as with a lot of the features that roll out, there's different ways to access them. There's some that are
mhm,
rolled out; they're available immediately to everybody. Those are general
mhm,
access. There's some things that people have to ask for access for from their account managers, and MDM is a separate product.
mhm,
So for folks to be able to check this out, really you need to go talk to your account manager and they can help set you up with that. But anything you wanted to
mhm.
add to that at all, Paul?
No, I think you're spot on. So right now, everything we're talking about today is GA. So you don't have to worry about feature flags or anything like that. But to your point, MDM does have its own SKU. So if you're currently in RMM only deployment, you would want to just talk to your account manager to enable MDM as a whole, and kind of get that set up for some sort of initial trial period. But once you do that, you'll have a Ninja One MDM Apple and a Ninja One MDM Android application set up, and you can use these to go through some of the initial setup. And likewise, when it comes to adding devices, you can just add a device here, either mobile or, in the case of Mac, a computer, and it'll walk you through the process to generate what's called the enrollment profile, which is what you install on the device to enroll it into MDM. But once you have that enrollment profile installed, you have a managed device, and everything MDM related is within the policies. You can go into the policies, configure whatever you want to test out, and get that device configured how you want it to be.
Awesome. We have another good question from Joseph. Going back to your point about agent versus MDM, what's the difference there?
Mhm,
What do you recommend? So he says right now uh, we have the agents with macOS are just agent based, not MDM. Is it recommended to
mhm.
migrate those over?
So the ultimate answer to that question will always come down to what capabilities do you need. The way Mac works, there are a lot of features that require some sort of MDM on that device. Whether, of course, I want it to be Ninja One MDM, but otherwise some sort of MDM. Things like managing OS updates, managing encryption, configuring privacy preferences and system extensions for third-party apps. Those are things that either require or are very, very significantly easier to use when a device is in an MDM. So if you are fully managing these Macs and are expected to maintain their OS updates and configure and deploy third-party apps and things along those lines, I would definitely look into uh, putting them on an MDM to give you just a greater degree of control. But at the end of the day, if you're using RMM only and RMM only covers all of the use cases you need to support, then that's perfectly fine.
Thanks for that, Paul. Now we've
Mhm.
got from Robert. Here we're going into all the different tools, right? Talking about full stack, the overlapping capabilities, use cases, all those things. So Robert's
Mhm.
question: how would you handle logins being enforced from compliant devices by a conditional access policy? Let's say from Intune. So
Mhm.
you got Intune set up for that
Yep.
when you're using Mac MDM for Ninja.
Yep. Yeah. So this is a good question, and probably unsurprisingly, something we get a lot. So the use case here is if you're using Office 365 or other apps that are federated via Entra, you might want to restrict login access to say something like only a device that is managed by Ninja One can even authenticate into these cloud-based apps. Uh, I won't be able to speak too intelligently about it because there is another team that's building it out. But we did, or are currently in the process of building out and releasing kind of the initial stages of a dedicated integration that will be building up to exactly this type of use case. So I don't believe it is there today, but talk to your account managers if you want to speak to the Intune integration, and they'll certainly get you in front of people that can speak more intelligently on it. But do know that this use case is something we're aware of, and it is something we are going to be building up that integration to support. Basic compliance statuses, like I was just describing, but as well as more complex ones in the future, like making sure devices are in the right OS versions or approved users are logged in and the device is not out of date, and et cetera, et cetera. It's something we're going to be gradually building on well into the future.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that. Typical trademark soon, but in this case, very soon. There's going to be some webinars and additional things that are coming out about an integration with Intune and what all that entails, what it offers. That's going to be happening very soon. So definitely keep an eye out, and we'll keep you guys informed.
Mhm.
Awesome. Well, any other questions? This is your last call. We've got Paul here about FileVault, about anything macOS related, MDM. Um, in the meantime, Paul, anything that you can speak to in terms of uh, how this fits in your kind of overall trajectory or vision for building up Mac MDM?
Mhm. Yeah, so I would say when we first released macOS MDM support initially, earlier in this year, kind of the initial requirement was let's get it on parity with mobile Apple MDM that we support. So we can support everything we support there today, and we'll be good to go. But there certainly are some features in Mac that don't really have a direct equivalent on mobile. And I think encryption is one of the biggest ones. So it was something we had to build new, but we were very cognizant when we released the initial macOS MDM support that this would probably be kind of the biggest gap, if you will, of features that a lot of our potential customers would be looking for. But now that we have this, there are a number of other areas and some similar payloads we're going to be building out. Things like supporting lost mode for devices, supporting web clips for devices, kiosk scenarios, and a few other things that I sort of consider device-centric management. But as we kind of finish up those and check those boxes, we're going to see a shift in what we're focusing on to be more what I would consider user management, not in managing the user themselves, but managing the user experience on the device. So things like managing the local accounts, configuring SSO, configuring user specific configurations, email access, and things along those lines. So I think over the next year or so, you're going to see this transition of as we start sort of accumulating more of these device centric capabilities, we're also going to be adding on to that with some of these user centric management capabilities that are becoming more and more common too.
That's great. Very cool to hear kind of the overall thought behind the approach and the roadmap and everything. So we do have one question, and this is definitely an understandable one. Um, to dig 8.86. Thanks for the question. So he's pointing out, okay, FileVault Management exclusive to MDM for macOS. And I think it kind of covered why that was the case, right? But
Yep.
a natural thing is, well, okay, but this is similar to BitLocker. Is BitLocker going to be separated out now as an additional thing we're going to
Mhm.
have to pay for, basically? Um, and I know this is kind of like outside your purview, but
Sure, sure.
any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, so I would say with the caveat that I am an Apple guy and not a Windows guy, I would not worry that that would be the case just because of the technical reasons underlying it. On Mac, MDM is very much required to fully manage this type of workflow, and on Windows, it's simply not the case. On Windows, the RMM agent can technically do what it needs to do, and so I wouldn't expect any shift in the licensing there.
Yeah, I would add to that too. I mean, another good example is the warranty detections and management, right? That's something that didn't require additional. I don't know. Well, I guess to put that the same way, it didn't require additional technology or additional cost. It was basically another capability we got to add on. It was added on not as an additional paid feature. It's basically seen as, hey, this is something we can expand into and offer using the capability that we have currently with the RMM. Let's give that away for free. And so, yeah, I think that's another thing that will hopefully kind of reassure you there. Um, all right. Any other final questions? Otherwise, we can all head out for the, well, I guess not quite head out for the weekend, but at least hopefully sail smoothly into it.
Yeah.
Um, a long weekend for some of us.
Yeah,
It's good
start the
indeed.
countdown.
And everyone, I just want to thank you again too for checking into this. It's been awesome. Thank you, Paul, for taking the time out to join us. Really appreciate you and all the PMs. I mean, you guys are so
Mhm.
great. You're plugged into the Discord. You're active in seeking out feedback and answering questions. Obligatory shout out or call out for if you're not a member of the Discord. You should be. You should check it out because you can get access to Paul directly, um, along with other folks or other PMs and across the various products, and get access to sneak peeks, all sorts of good stuff. But really appreciate you guys taking the time to do this. Every release is packed with so much. We want to make sure that you all are aware of everything that's new so you can take full advantage of it. So thank you everybody for joining us for 10.0 week. 11.0 week is going to be here before you know it, in about a month's time or so. So looking forward to that. And in the meantime, you know where to find us. Reach out with questions, concerns, requests. We're always listening. Paul, thanks again for being
Yeah,
here.